The rain came down hard enough to blur the city lights into trembling streaks of color. On a lonely stretch of road near the industrial edge of Millhaven, a voice cut through the storm with shocking certainty. "Officer, I know exactly what you are doing. That is why I have been recording you for the last several months." Captain Franklin Reed froze beside a worn sedan. His flashlight beam illuminated the face of Simone Harper, a 34-year-old African-American public defender known throughout the city for fighting battles few others would touch. Water streamed from her hair and jacket, yet her gaze never wavered. For a brief moment, confusion flashed across Reed's face, then came anger. His hand drifted toward his holster while thunder rolled overhead. Something about this traffic stop had suddenly gone very wrong. Most people in Millhaven knew Simone Harper by reputation. She spent years defending poor families, overlooked workers, and young people trapped inside a justice system that often seemed determined to crush them. Her courtroom victories earned respect from ordinary citizens. They also earned resentment from powerful people. Simone carried another burden as well. She was the daughter of Detective Marcus Harper, a respected officer accused of corruption before his death. The accusations destroyed his name before he ever had the chance to defend himself. Millhaven was a struggling Rust Belt city where abandoned factories towered over neighborhoods divided by race and opportunity. Complaints against police officers appeared regularly, yet investigations rarely produced answers. Cases moved through crowded courtrooms with unsettling speed. For years, Simone noticed patterns that others ignored. Certain arrests looked manufactured. Certain officers always appeared in the same reports. Certain minorities seemed targeted again and again. Quietly, she began collecting evidence. Captain Reed stood at the center of the city's law enforcement machine. At 48, he projected confidence and authority. Local news stations praised his leadership. Community events celebrated him as a hero. Crime statistics appeared to support his success. Yet inside the department, officers understood an unwritten rule. Loyalty mattered more than truth. Internal investigations disappeared whenever they approached Reed's closest allies. Questions about Detective Marcus Harper's case had vanished the same way. Simone never forgot the day of her father's funeral. Reed had approached her wearing a mask of sympathy. Then, when nobody else could hear, he whispered words that haunted her for years. He suggested her father had taken the easy way out. The cruelty behind those words revealed something darker than grief. From that moment forward, Simone stopped trusting him completely. Earlier that evening, Simone had been driving home through the east side of the city. Rain hammered her windshield while she reviewed legal files in her mind. Her phone buzzed with a message from her sister, Naya. A simple family reminder brought a brief smile to Simone's face. Then flashing blue and red lights filled her rearview mirror. Her stomach tightened instantly. When she recognized Captain Reed behind the wheel of the patrol vehicle, she understood this was no coincidence. Reed approached slowly. His voice remained polite. He requested her license and registration. When Simone asked why she had been stopped, he claimed one of her taillights was broken. She knew that was impossible. The light had worked perfectly earlier. Through rain-streaked glass, she noticed a second patrol car arriving without sirens. Another officer stepped out and lingered near her trunk. A third vehicle parked nearby. 3 officers for a broken taillight. Every instinct inside her screamed that something was wrong. Reed ordered her out of the vehicle. Simone asked whether she was being detained. He responded with a practiced smile and vague language about routine procedures. As she stepped into the storm, cold rain soaked through her clothing. Reed announced he would search her vehicle. Simone immediately refused consent and challenged his legal justification. Reed claimed he smelled marijuana. The lie arrived too smoothly. Across the street, hidden beneath the shadow of a storefront awning, someone appeared to be watching. A faint glow from a phone briefly illuminated the stranger's face. The sight lasted only a second. Then everything accelerated. An officer opened Simone's trunk. Reed positioned himself between her and the vehicle. She could not clearly see what was happening. Moments later, another officer called out dramatically. Reed walked over and returned carrying a sealed bag filled with white powder. The look on his face told her everything. This was not discovery. This was theater. The rain fell harder as Reed held up the evidence for everyone present to see. Simone felt fear surge through her chest, but anger rose even higher. She knew exactly what had happened. And for the first time, she realized the trap she had spent months anticipating had finally been sprung. As handcuffs closed around her wrists, Captain Reed smiled with quiet triumph. What neither man realized was that Simone Harper had prepared for this night long before the flashing lights ever appeared behind her car. The ride to the county jail felt longer than any journey Simone Harper had ever taken. Rain hammered against the patrol car windows, while city lights blurred into distorted shadows. Every bump in the road reminded her that powerful people believed they had already destroyed her life. Captain Franklin Reed understood how public perception worked. Before Simone even reached the booking desk, the narrative had already begun spreading across Millhaven. A respected police captain had supposedly uncovered a major drug trafficker hiding behind a public defender's badge. The story was clean, dramatic, and easy for people to believe. Truth rarely moved as fast as a lie. Inside the jail, officers processed Simone with mechanical efficiency. Her belongings disappeared into evidence bags. Her phone, laptop, watch, and personal files were catalogued and removed. Some officers avoided eye contact. Others looked at her with open suspicion. A few seemed almost disappointed. Simone recognized many of them from years spent defending clients in the same building. By sunrise, local news outlets exploded with coverage. Her booking photograph appeared on television screens, websites, and social media pages throughout the city. Headlines described her as a public official caught carrying narcotics worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Reporters repeated police statements without questioning obvious inconsistencies. Within hours, years of hard work seemed buried beneath accusations. In the jail common area, inmates gathered around a television mounted near the ceiling. Simone stood quietly among them, still wearing clothes damp from the storm. Captain Reed appeared on the screen, surrounded by microphones and cameras. His expression radiated disappointment rather than triumph. It was a performance worthy of an award. He spoke about trust. He spoke about accountability. He spoke about protecting the community. Every carefully rehearsed sentence painted Simone as a hypocrite who had betrayed public confidence. Then came the moment that tightened her jaw. A reporter asked whether Simone had been investigating police misconduct before her arrest. Reed responded smoothly. He claimed her accusations against the department had always been baseless. He suggested her investigations were motivated by personal problems and criminal behavior. His words transformed her years of evidence, gathering into the actions of a desperate woman seeking revenge. The district attorney soon appeared beside him. He announced that Simone's legal privileges would be suspended, pending investigation. Every active case under her care would immediately be reassigned. That decision hurt more than the arrest. Her clients were mostly poor, most lacked resources, many already distrusted the system. She knew exactly what would happen once their cases landed on overloaded desks belonging to attorneys with little time and fewer options. Everything had been timed perfectly. Her reputation, her investigations, her cases. One coordinated strike. Later that morning, a young inmate approached cautiously. She introduced herself as Tiana Brooks. Her voice remained low enough to avoid attracting attention. "They did the same thing to my brother." Simone turned toward her immediately. Tiana explained that officers claimed to discover drugs inside her brother's vehicle during a routine traffic stop. He insisted he had been framed. Nobody believed him. He accepted a plea agreement and remained in prison. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Before Simone could ask additional questions, correctional officers arrived and ordered her toward a holding area for arraignment. The walk through the jail corridors felt strangely familiar. For years, she had escorted frightened clients through these same hallways. She had reassured them when fear overwhelmed reason. She had promised them that fairness still existed somewhere inside the system. Now she occupied their place, and the irony was impossible to escape. Hours later, Simone entered a cramped courtroom wearing restraints around her wrists and ankles. The gallery overflowed with reporters, attorneys, and curious spectators. Near the front sat her younger sister, Nia Harper. Nia worked as an investigative journalist. Unlike most reporters present, she understood exactly how dangerous this situation had become. Judge Harold Grant presided over the hearing. Simone knew him well. He often ruled in favor of prosecutors. His friendship with influential city leaders was hardly a secret. Watching him glance at her file for only a few seconds told Simone everything she needed to know. The outcome had likely been decided before anyone entered the room. Her court-appointed attorney argued that she possessed deep community ties, a clean record, and no history of violence. The prosecution countered with dramatic references to drug trafficking and public betrayal. Then Simone's attorney raised the issue Reed feared most. He requested independent examination of the electronic devices seized during her arrest. The prosecutor objected immediately. Judge Grant denied the request without hesitation. A murmur spread through the courtroom. Simone remained expressionless. She had expected this. Then the judge announced bail. $1 million. The number shocked nearly everyone present. Even experienced reporters exchanged stunned looks. The amount effectively guaranteed she would remain incarcerated. As deputies prepared to escort her away, Simone locked eyes with Nia. Their stare lasted less than a second. Yet years of trust allowed an entire conversation to pass silently between them. The contingency plan was now active. As Simone disappeared through a side door, Captain Reed received a text message on his phone. The message contained only 2 words. Everything worked. Reed smiled and slipped the phone back into his pocket. For the first time in months, he believed he had finally won. What he did not know was that Nia Harper had already started uncovering evidence capable of bringing his entire empire crashing down. The public defender's office felt different without Simone Harper. Conversations stopped when people entered rooms. Nervous whispers replaced ordinary workplace noise. Evidence tape sealed her office door while investigators boxed years of legal files. The atmosphere resembled a funeral more than a workplace. Nia Harper arrived carrying a reporter's notebook and press credentials. Her expression remained calm, but exhaustion hid beneath her professional composure. Every television in the building repeated the same story. Every headline treated her sister's guilt as an established fact. Nia understood something many journalists forgot. Facts and truth were not always the same thing. Using a routine interview as cover, she gained access to the office. While speaking with administrators about staffing shortages caused by Simone's arrest, she carefully studied the surrounding activity. Detectives moved through hallways collecting documents. Employees avoided discussing the situation openly. Then she noticed a nervous-looking detective near the records room. Detective Raymond Harris. His eyes met hers for only a moment, before he quickly looked away. The reaction immediately caught her attention. Years of investigative reporting had taught Nia to recognize guilt when she saw it. Later, after finding herself alone inside Simone's office, she began examining the room more carefully. Something felt wrong. Desk drawers stood slightly open. Cabinets appeared disturbed. Certain folders were missing entirely. Someone had searched the office thoroughly. Nia powered on Simone's desktop computer. The hard drive had been wiped, not partially erased, completely cleaned. A rush of anger flooded through her. Whoever orchestrated Simone's arrest had moved quickly. Outside, Detective Harris watched from an unmarked vehicle parked across the street. His phone rang. Captain Reed. The conversation lasted less than a minute. Reed demanded updates regarding Simone's files, backups, and possible hidden evidence. Harris answered mechanically, but discomfort lingered in his voice. After ending the call, he remained motionless behind the steering wheel. For years, Harris had watched corruption grow inside the department. At first, it seemed small: minor favors, questionable reports, missing paperwork. Eventually, those compromises became something much darker. Now, innocent people were losing their freedom, and Harris knew it. Across town, Simone spent her first night in a shared jail cell. Her new cellmate introduced herself as Tasha Williams. Tasha had once worked as a nurse before being arrested on drug charges several months earlier. Like Simone, she insisted the evidence had been planted. After lights out, the darkness encouraged honesty. The women spoke quietly, while distant sounds echoed through the facility. Tasha described a pattern stretching back years. Traffic stops, drug discoveries, expedited prosecutions, destroyed reputations. Every victim shared one thing in common: they had challenged police authority. Some filed complaints, others exposed misconduct. Several simply refused to stay silent, and every one of them belonged to communities with little political influence. Simone listened carefully. The pieces fit together too perfectly. How many? At least 7. The answer settled heavily between them. 7 innocent lives, maybe more. Tasha described officers involved in multiple arrests. Certain names appeared repeatedly. Captain Reed always hovered somewhere near the center. Simone felt a cold certainty growing stronger. This was larger than personal revenge, much larger. Before sleep finally arrived, she revealed something Tasha never expected. "I knew this might happen." Tasha stared at her through the darkness. "You expected to get arrested?" "Not exactly, but I expected Reed to make a move." Months earlier, Simone began creating backups of every investigation file. She stored evidence in multiple locations. She documented conversations. She protected information from seizure. If Reed believed confiscating her electronics ended the investigation, he had underestimated her completely. The following afternoon brought an unexpected visitor, Officer James Foster. Recently transferred from another city, Foster sat across from Simone inside a visitation booth. Neither trusted the other immediately. That was precisely why the conversation mattered. Foster revealed disturbing information. He claimed internal investigators from outside the region had already started examining corruption inside Millhaven's police department. Irregular evidence handling, missing recordings, suspicious finances, and unexplained disciplinary actions had attracted attention. Simone listened carefully. Every claim aligned with evidence she had already collected. Yet trust remained dangerous. "Why risk talking to me?" Foster leaned forward. "Because your record doesn't match the story they're selling." His answer felt genuine. Still, Simone remained cautious. Before leaving, Foster slipped her a phone number and instructed her to memorize it. Then he raised his voice loudly enough for nearby officers to hear. "Think about accepting a plea deal." The performance fooled everyone except Simone. As he walked away, she realized something important. Not everyone inside the department belonged to Reed. That discovery created a tiny crack in the wall surrounding her. Meanwhile, Nia drove beyond city limits toward an old cabin hidden among dense woods. The property once belonged to their father. Few people knew it existed. Inside, she opened a battered tackle box containing items preserved after his death. Beneath fishing equipment rested a waterproof package, exactly where Simone had once hinted she should look if anything ever happened. Hands trembling, Nia connected a flash drive to her laptop. Hundreds of files appeared. Financial records, photographs, witness interviews, property documents, shipping manifests, years of investigative work. Their father had been building a corruption case before his death, and he had never stopped collecting evidence. One folder immediately captured Nia's attention: Clearwater Holdings. The documents inside revealed suspicious warehouses, shell companies, and unexplained money transfers connected to people around Captain Reed. The deeper she looked, the worse everything became. Then the cabin door rattled unexpectedly. Nia froze. Nobody else was supposed to know she was there. For several terrifying seconds, silence filled the room. Then came another sound. A vehicle engine shutting off outside. Someone had found the cabin, and Nia suddenly realized the investigation was no longer about clearing her sister's name. It had become a fight for survival. The sound outside the cabin lasted only a few seconds, yet it felt much longer. Nia Harper lowered her laptop screen and listened carefully. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. Through the narrow window, she spotted a pickup truck parked among the trees. Then a familiar voice called out, "Nia." Relief flooded through her body. It was Sarah Parker. Sarah had spent years working financial investigations before leaving federal service. She was one of the few people Nia trusted completely. Beside her stood Alex Rodriguez, a cybersecurity specialist and longtime friend. The moment they entered the cabin, Nia showed them everything. Her father's files covered the table: shipping manifests, property records, bank transactions, photographs. Sarah studied the documents with growing concern. "Your father was building something enormous." Nia nodded. The evidence connected shell corporations to warehouses across several counties. Large shipments entered through legitimate businesses before disappearing from official records. Money flowed through offshore accounts before returning disguised as consulting fees and real estate investments. Sarah pointed toward one name appearing repeatedly: Clearwater Holdings. Every major transaction seemed connected to it. Alex began searching corporate databases. The company looked legitimate on paper: furniture imports, commercial storage, regional distribution. But the financial activity made no sense. Reported inventory weights rarely matched shipping costs. Warehouse occupancy records contradicted transportation logs. Millions of dollars moved through accounts without reasonable explanation. "This isn't furniture." Sarah's voice was quiet. Everyone in the room knew it. Meanwhile, inside the county jail, Simone Harper focused on surviving one day at a time. The system moved quickly against her. Prosecutors accelerated court schedules. Requests for evidence review disappeared. Motions were denied almost automatically. Everything pointed toward a rapid conviction. During lunch, Tasha Williams shared information she had gathered months earlier. She described a warehouse near the old riverfront. According to rumors circulating among several wrongfully accused inmates, Captain Reed met trusted associates there regularly. The location matched an address appearing inside Marcus Harper's files: Unit 17, West Side Storage. The connection sent a chill through Simone. The investigation was beginning to overlap in ways too significant to ignore. Later that afternoon, her attorney arrived carrying troubling news. The prosecution wanted trial immediately. Far sooner than normal. Simone understood why. The less preparation time available, the fewer opportunities existed to expose corruption. Then she delivered a coded message intended for Nia. "Check Dad's fishing spot." The attorney looked confused. Simone offered no explanation. She knew her sister would understand. Before leaving, the attorney mentioned something else. Personal property inventory records were available. Simone requested verification of every item, especially her watch. The request seemed harmless. It was anything but. Back at the cabin, Nia's phone rang. The attorney's call lasted only a minute. Yet the message changed everything. She immediately retrieved a second container hidden among her father's belongings. Inside rested another storage device. When connected to her laptop, hundreds of additional files appeared. These were newer, much newer. Some belonged to Marcus Harper, others clearly belonged to Simone. Surveillance photographs showed Captain Reed entering warehouses late at night. Financial spreadsheets documented suspicious transactions. Notes connected multiple arrests to officers already appearing in corruption complaints. Months of investigative work unfolded across the screen. Sarah sat silently. Alex stopped typing. Nobody spoke for several moments. Then Sarah broke the silence. "This is enough to start a federal investigation." "Maybe," Nia answered carefully, "but not enough to save Simone before trial." That reality hung heavily over the room. Time was becoming their greatest enemy. The following evening, Alex successfully accessed security camera feeds surrounding several warehouse properties. Most showed nothing unusual. Then activity appeared at Unit 17. 3 police vehicles arrived after midnight. Captain Reed stepped out first. Several officers followed. The cameras recorded large duffel bags being carried inside. Later, different bags emerged, smaller, lighter. The footage lacked enough detail for court. But it revealed something important. The warehouse mattered. Very much. A short time later, another call arrived. Officer James Foster. His voice sounded tense. He had new information. Someone inside the department was considering cooperation. A veteran detective, a man who had witnessed years of misconduct. Detective Harris. According to Foster, Harris finally believed Reed had gone too far. Simone's arrest changed everything. The detective feared innocent people would continue disappearing into prison unless someone acted. For the first time, real cracks appeared within Reed's inner circle. That night, Nia barely slept. She reviewed files until dawn. One document captured her attention repeatedly. It detailed a meeting her father scheduled shortly before his death. The meeting involved federal prosecutors outside the state. Records showed he planned to deliver evidence, but the meeting never happened. Official reports claimed Marcus Harper died before reaching the appointment. Sarah read the file twice, then a third time. Something doesn't fit. Nia looked up. "What do you mean?" Your father wasn't acting like someone preparing to give up. Sarah pointed toward investigation notes. He was expanding the case, gathering witnesses, protecting evidence, making future plans. People preparing for suicide don't usually organize long-term operations. The room fell silent. The possibility had always existed in the back of Nia's mind. Now someone else had finally said it aloud. Maybe Marcus Harper hadn't taken his own life. Maybe someone made sure he never reached that meeting. Before anyone could discuss it further, Alex's computer issued a warning tone. Someone was attempting to access his network remotely. Not random hackers, targeted probes, professional ones. Alex's expression hardened. They're looking for us. Nia stared toward the dark forest outside the cabin window. The investigation had crossed a line. Captain Reed no longer viewed them as an inconvenience. He viewed them as a threat, and somewhere in Millhaven, powerful people were already making plans to stop them before the truth reached daylight. Captain Franklin Reed sat alone inside his office long after midnight. Rain tapped softly against the windows while city lights flickered beyond the glass. Reports covered his desk, yet his attention remained fixed on a single problem. Simone Harper should have surrendered by now. Most people did. Fear usually broke them. Public humiliation usually finished the job. Instead, she continued fighting. That unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. Across town, Nia Harper and her small team gathered around the cabin table. Empty coffee cups surrounded stacks of evidence. Fatigue showed on every face, yet nobody suggested stopping. They had come too far. Alex continued monitoring network traffic. Sarah reviewed financial records. Nia organized witness lists. Every hour revealed additional connections between Captain Reed, suspicious arrests, and the warehouse operation. Then another breakthrough arrived. Alex located court records involving several people previously arrested under circumstances nearly identical to Simone's. One name stood out immediately: Marcus Johnson, a community organizer who had publicly criticized police conduct. Drug charges appeared shortly afterward. Then came Elena Martinez, a teacher whose brother suffered severe injuries during an arrest. She filed complaints. Weeks later, officers discovered narcotics inside her vehicle. The pattern repeated again and again. Different victims, different neighborhoods, same result. Every road led back toward Reed. By morning, Nia and Sarah began contacting families connected to those cases. Many were afraid, some refused to speak, others quietly confirmed details matching Simone's experience. Traffic stops, questionable searches, evidence appearing unexpectedly. Rapid prosecutions, lives destroyed. Each story strengthened the larger picture. Meanwhile, Simone faced mounting pressure inside jail. Prosecutors offered plea agreements. Correctional officers made subtle comments about long prison sentences. Even fellow inmates warned her that powerful people rarely lost. Simone listened politely, then ignored them. She understood exactly why Reed wanted a guilty plea. A conviction would bury questions forever. No public trial, no testimony, no scrutiny, no investigation, just another case file quietly closed. That afternoon, Officer James Foster returned. This time, his expression looked more serious. "We have a problem." Simone immediately focused on him. Foster explained that Reed planned a major operation within the next 2 days. Large quantities of narcotics were expected to move through the warehouse network. The timing seemed deliberate. If Simone's trial ended quickly, public attention would remain fixed on her while Reed completed one of his biggest shipments. "He's rushing everything," Simone spoke quietly. Foster nodded. "Exactly." The conversation confirmed something important. Reed wasn't merely protecting himself, he was protecting an active criminal enterprise. Back at the cabin, Sarah uncovered additional financial records hidden within old banking archives. The discovery stunned everyone. Regular cash deposits appeared inside offshore accounts linked indirectly to Reed. The payments stretched back nearly a decade, millions of dollars. Too much money, too many years, too many coincidences. Sarah leaned back slowly. This operation didn't begin recently. It started years ago, maybe around the time Marcus Harper began investigating. The implication filled the room with silence. Nia stared toward the evidence board covering one wall. Photographs, names, arrest records, financial trails, shipping logs. Everything seemed connected by invisible threads. And at the center stood Captain Reed. Later that evening, Nia received an unexpected message. A source inside city government wanted to meet. No phone call, no name. Only a location and time. Sarah immediately disliked the idea. Could be a trap. Maybe, Nia admitted, but it could also be someone trying to help. After considerable debate, they decided to proceed cautiously. The meeting occurred inside a nearly empty diner on the edge of town. An older man occupied a corner booth. His nervous behavior suggested genuine fear. After confirming Nia's identity, he slid an envelope across the table. "I never met you. I was never here." Then he left. The entire encounter lasted less than 60 seconds. Inside the envelope rested copies of internal department documents, personnel reports, evidence transfer logs, disciplinary records. One file immediately caught Nia's attention. Officer Daniel Price, the same officer involved during Simone's arrest. Several complaints alleged misconduct during vehicle searches. Each complaint disappeared without formal investigation. Every review carried identical authorization. Captain Franklin Reed. The evidence continued piling higher, yet one critical piece remained missing. Direct proof. They needed something impossible to explain away. Something capable of surviving court. Something powerful enough to destroy Reed's carefully crafted public image. The next morning brought another shock. Nia arrived outside the jail for a scheduled visit. Before entering, she discovered all 4 tires on her vehicle slashed. A note rested beneath the windshield wiper. The message contained only 3 words. "Walk away now. No signature, no explanation, no need." Nia understood exactly who sent it. For a moment, fear gripped her chest. The threat felt personal, real, dangerously close. Then anger replaced fear. Her sister sat behind bars for a crime she never committed. Her father died under suspicious circumstances. Families throughout Millhaven lost years because nobody challenged corruption. Walking away was no longer possible. Inside the visitation room, Simone studied the note after Nia described it. Neither woman appeared surprised. "Reed is scared." Nia blinked. "Scared?" Simone nodded. "If he felt confident, he wouldn't waste time threatening us." The answer changed everything. For weeks, Reed had appeared untouchable. Now evidence suggested otherwise. Pressure was reaching him. Mistakes often followed pressure. As their visit ended, Nia stood to leave. Before reaching the door, she glanced back. Simone remained calm despite chains, guards, and looming trial dates. For the first time since the arrest, Nia saw genuine confidence in her sister's eyes. That confidence meant only one thing. Simone knew something important, something she had not yet revealed. And whatever that secret was, it might become the key to bringing Captain Franklin Reed's entire empire crashing down. The jail visitation room felt unusually quiet after Nia Harper left. Simone remained seated for several moments, replaying every detail of their conversation. The threats, the surveillance, the growing panic inside Captain Reed's circle. Pressure was building, and pressure forced people to make mistakes. Back at the cabin, Nia arrived shortly before sunset. Sarah Parker and Alex Rodriguez immediately noticed the change in her expression. Something happened. Nia nodded. Simone thinks Reed is scared. Sarah considered the statement carefully. That actually makes sense. The evidence board behind them had grown so crowded that sections overlapped. Photographs connected to financial records. Shipping manifests connected to arrest reports. Witness statements connected to police personnel files. The picture was becoming impossible to ignore, yet they still lacked one critical element: a direct connection between Reed and the narcotics operation. Without that link, defense attorneys would attack every accusation. That evening, Officer James Foster called again. This time, his voice carried urgency. "The shipment is happening tomorrow night." Everyone fell silent. Foster explained that a large quantity of cocaine would arrive at Warehouse Unit 17 before being distributed across several counties. According to internal conversations, Reed planned to oversee the operation personally. "Why take the risk himself?" Nia asked. "Because he's rushing." Foster answered immediately. "He's trying to move everything before Simone's trial exposes problems." The information changed everything. For the first time, they knew exactly when Reed would be vulnerable. The next challenge involved proving what happened. Alex spent hours developing surveillance plans, drone routes, camera positions, backup recording systems, multiple storage locations. Every precaution mattered. If Reed discovered the operation, evidence could disappear instantly. Meanwhile, inside the police department, Detective Raymond Harris fought his own battle. For nearly 2 decades, he had watched corruption spread through the organization. At first, he justified his silence. Then he rationalized it. Eventually, he simply stopped questioning it. Now guilt weighed heavily on him. Simone's arrest forced him to confront the truth. Too many innocent people had suffered. Too many lives had been destroyed. Late that night, Harris met Foster inside an abandoned parking garage. No uniforms, no department vehicles, no witnesses. The detective looked exhausted. "I should have spoken years ago." Foster remained silent. There was nothing to say. Harris handed him several documents: original evidence logs, unedited reports, records proving narcotics disappeared from police custody before reappearing during later arrests. The paperwork represented years of hidden corruption. "Why now?" Foster finally asked. "Because Reed crossed a line," Harris answered. "Simone Harper isn't guilty, we both know it." The detective looked away, and deep down, I think he knows his time is running out. Back at the cabin, another discovery emerged. Sarah found records connected to offshore banking accounts. Several deposits aligned perfectly with major narcotic seizures officially credited to Reed's department. The pattern appeared repeatedly. Drugs disappeared. Money appeared. The timeline was devastating. Nia stared at the spreadsheets. "How many years?" "At least 9, Sarah replied quietly. "Maybe longer." The realization settled heavily over everyone. This wasn't corruption. This was an organized criminal enterprise operating behind police badges. The following morning, Nia visited the location where Simone had been arrested. She wanted fresh eyes, fresh perspectives, fresh possibilities. Most businesses nearby offered little help. People were nervous. Many recognized her from news coverage. Some refused to discuss anything involving Captain Reed. Fear remained powerful in Millhaven. Then she entered a small gas station across from the traffic stop location. The clerk immediately recognized her. After several minutes of careful conversation, his attitude changed. His voice dropped. "You didn't hear this from me." Nia leaned forward. The clerk glanced toward the entrance, then toward the office. "Our security camera covers that intersection." Nia froze. "The camera worked that night?" The clerk nodded. "Management told police it was broken." It wasn't. For a second, Nia could hardly breathe. "Do you still have the footage?" The clerk disappeared into the back room. Minutes later, he returned carrying a storage device. "Company backups, 30-day retention." Nia accepted it carefully. "Thank you." The clerk looked terrified. "Please don't mention my name." She promised she wouldn't. Outside, Nia rushed into her vehicle. Hands shaking, she inserted the drive into her laptop. Video footage appeared. Crystal clear. The angle captured Simone's vehicle. Captain Reed, Officer Daniels, the search, the trunk. Nia's heart pounded harder with every passing second. Then it happened. Officer Daniels reached inside his jacket, removed a package, placed it inside the trunk, directly in view of the camera. No ambiguity, no confusion, no alternative explanation. Evidence planting, caught on video. For several moments, Nia simply stared at the screen. Months of fear, weeks of uncertainty, countless sleepless nights, all leading to this moment. She immediately called Sarah. The answer came after one ring. "Please tell me you found something." Nia laughed through tears. "We got him." Sarah fell silent, then whispered 2 words. "Are you sure?" Nia replayed the footage. Officer Daniels appeared again. The package clearly visible, the frame-up undeniable. "Absolutely sure." Back inside the county jail, Simone sat alone in her cell, unaware of the discovery. Yet she sensed change approaching. The feeling lingered throughout the evening. Something important had shifted. Somewhere beyond the walls, pieces were finally falling into place. What Simone did not know was that the evidence capable of destroying Captain Reed's entire operation now existed in a form no lawyer, politician, or corrupt official could explain away. For the first time since the handcuffs closed around her wrists, victory was no longer a distant hope. It was becoming a real possibility. The discovery of the gas station footage transformed everything. For days, Simone Harper and her team had been chasing fragments of truth through a maze of corruption, intimidation, and lies. Now they finally possessed something undeniable: video evidence, not rumors, not testimony, not assumptions. Proof. Inside the cabin, Sarah Parker watched the footage repeatedly. Every viewing strengthened the case. The camera clearly captured Officer Daniels approaching Simone Harper's vehicle. It clearly showed him removing an object from inside his jacket. It clearly recorded him placing that object inside the trunk before calling Captain Reed over. The frame-up unfolded in plain sight. Nobody spoke for several moments after the final replay. Then Alex Rodriguez broke the silence. "This changes everything." Sarah nodded. "It destroys the prosecution's case." Nia wanted to celebrate, but caution held her back. One video wasn't enough, not against someone like Reed. They still needed evidence connecting him directly to the larger criminal operation. Otherwise, he could sacrifice Daniels and walk away untouched. That possibility terrified everyone. Late that afternoon, Foster contacted the cabin again. His update carried both good news and danger. Detective Harris had agreed to wear a recording device during the upcoming warehouse operation. The plan was simple, dangerously simple. Harris would attend the shipment as usual. Federal investigators would monitor communications. If Reed discussed narcotics distribution, evidence tampering, or bribery, authorities could finally move. The risk remained enormous. If Reed discovered the wire, Harris would not leave the warehouse safely. Meanwhile, Simone Harper sat inside her cell, reviewing every possibility she could imagine. The walls around her seemed smaller each day. Guards watched her more closely. Prosecutors accelerated paperwork. Court schedules moved with suspicious speed. Everything suggested someone wanted her conviction before the weekend ended. Then Officer James Foster appeared unexpectedly. Officially, he was conducting a routine prisoner assessment. Unofficially, he brought critical information. "The operation is tonight." Simone immediately understood. "Warehouse Unit 17. Foster nodded. "Everything points there." For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Simone revealed something she had kept hidden from almost everyone. "There is a tracker." Foster frowned. "A tracker?" "Inside Reed's cruiser." The officer stared at her. Simone explained that months earlier she had secretly documented Reed's movements after noticing unusual activity surrounding certain arrests. Every suspicious warehouse visit had been recorded. Every late-night trip. Every unexplained stop. The data existed in secure storage beyond Reed's reach. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because I didn't know who to trust." The answer required no further explanation. Corruption had infected too many places. Back at the cabin, Nia and Sarah organized evidence packages for multiple destinations. Federal agencies, state investigators, journalists, civil rights organizations. If anything happened to them, the information would survive. Nobody intended to lose everything, because a single hard drive disappeared. As darkness settled across Millhaven, tension filled the cabin. The clock seemed louder than usual. Every passing minute carried them closer to the warehouse operation, closer to Reed, closer to answers. Shortly before midnight, Alex launched surveillance drones toward the industrial district. The devices traveled quietly above abandoned factories and empty streets. Video feeds streamed back to monitors inside the cabin. Everyone watched. Nobody spoke. Then movement appeared. Vehicles entered the warehouse complex. Several police cruisers, unmarked SUVs, commercial trucks. Captain Reed stepped from the lead vehicle. Even through grainy footage, his confidence seemed unmistakable. He moved like a man who believed himself untouchable. Minutes later, Detective Harris arrived. Nia felt her stomach tighten. This was the moment. Inside the warehouse, hidden microphones transmitted conversations to federal listeners stationed nearby. The first several minutes revealed nothing important. Routine instructions, scheduling details, vehicle assignments. Then everything changed. A voice identified as Daniels asked a question. What about the lawyer? Reed laughed. The sound echoed clearly through the recording. She'll be gone by Monday. Nobody is saving her. Silence filled the cabin. The statement alone was devastating. Then Reed continued speaking. His words became even worse. He discussed evidence, discussed shipments, discussed payments, discussed controlling investigations. Every sentence deepened the criminal conspiracy. Sarah stared at the monitor. Oh my God, the operation was unraveling in real time. For years, Reed carefully protected himself. Tonight, pressure had finally loosened his discipline. But before anyone could celebrate, Alex's expression suddenly changed. His face drained of color. What is it? Nia demanded. Alex pointed toward one drone feed. A vehicle was leaving the warehouse unexpectedly. Fast, too fast. The camera zoomed closer. Nia's heart nearly stopped. The driver was Captain Reed, and judging by his expression, he looked like a man who had just discovered something was terribly wrong. For the first time that night, fear entered the room. If Reed realized a federal operation surrounded him, everything could collapse. Witnesses could disappear, evidence could vanish, people could die. The hunt for justice had entered its most dangerous phase. And Captain Franklin Reed was no longer standing still. Captain Franklin Reed drove away from Warehouse Unit 17 with one hand gripping the steering wheel and the other wrapped tightly around his phone. Streetlights flashed across his face as panic slowly replaced confidence. Something felt wrong. Years of surviving investigations had sharpened his instincts. Tonight, those instincts were screaming. Back at the warehouse, Detective Raymond Harris struggled to remain calm. The recording device hidden beneath his clothing continued transmitting every conversation. Around him, officers moved shipments through loading bays, while trucks arrived and departed under cover of darkness. Everything appeared routine, yet Harris sensed danger approaching. Inside the surveillance cabin, Nia Harper watched drone footage with growing concern. Captain Reed was heading somewhere unexpected. Alex tracked the vehicle through traffic cameras. He isn't going home. Sarah leaned forward. Then where is he going? Alex zoomed in on a digital map. Everyone around the table fell silent. The destination marker pointed directly toward downtown Millhaven, toward the county jail. The realization struck like lightning. Simone. Nia grabbed her phone immediately. Call Foster, now. Alex dialed. The line connected instantly. Foster listened carefully before responding. His voice turned serious. If Reed is heading to the jail, then he knows something. Nobody needed further explanation. If Reed believed his operation was compromised, Simone represented the greatest threat. She knew too much, had investigated too long, and refused to break. At the jail, Simone sat awake inside her cell. Sleep had become impossible. Every instinct warned her that events were accelerating beyond anyone's control. Several cells away, Tasha Williams noticed unusual movement among correctional staff, extra guards, unexpected radio traffic, tense expressions. Something was happening. Minutes later, heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. Captain Reed appeared. His presence instantly drew Simone's attention. Police captains rarely visited jail housing units after midnight, especially not alone. Reed stopped outside her cell. For several seconds neither spoke. The silence carried years of history, years of lies, years of grief, years of unanswered questions. Finally Reed smiled, but the confidence was gone. You should have taken the plea deal. Simone stood slowly. And you should have stopped years ago. The words hit harder than she intended. Reed's jaw tightened. For the first time, Simone saw genuine anger beneath his polished public image. You think you've won? His voice dropped. You have no idea how many people depend on me. No. Simone answered calmly. I think they're terrified of what happens when you fall. The statement landed perfectly. Something flickered across Reed's face. Fear. Real fear. For years, he controlled every conversation. Tonight, someone else controlled the truth. Across town, federal agents continued monitoring warehouse transmissions. The evidence accumulated rapidly. Recorded admissions, financial discussions, shipment details, names, dates, locations. The case was growing stronger by the minute. Then Detective Harris made a mistake. A small one, but enough. While adjusting equipment, his hidden wire briefly became visible beneath his jacket. Officer Daniels noticed. The reaction was immediate. "What is that?" Several heads turned. Conversations stopped. Inside the cabin, everyone watching the live feed froze. Harris looked down. For a fraction of a second, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. Shouting exploded throughout the warehouse. Men rushed forward. Harris bolted toward an exit. Daniels chased him. Other officers followed. The microphone transmitted pounding footsteps and desperate breathing. Federal agents monitoring nearby received the same audio. "Move now," the command spread instantly. Vehicles surged toward the warehouse. Sirens shattered the night. Inside the jail, Reed's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. The color drained from his face. "Warehouse compromised." The message contained only 2 words. But they changed everything. Simone saw his expression and understood immediately. "It's over." Reed stared at her. No response, no denial, only silence. Then another message arrived. "Federal agents on scene." The captain's hand tightened around the phone. For years, he had manipulated evidence, controlled investigations, destroyed careers. Now events were moving beyond his reach. Back at the warehouse, federal vehicles surrounded the property. Floodlights illuminated loading docks. Agents poured from armored trucks. Commands echoed through loudspeakers. Officers scrambled in every direction. Some surrendered immediately, others attempted escape. None succeeded. Drone footage captured everything. Sarah watched in disbelief. "It's actually happening." Nia couldn't speak. After everything they endured, justice finally seemed possible. Then Alex noticed something alarming. One vehicle was missing, a black SUV, registered to Captain Reed. The same SUV parked behind the warehouse earlier. The same SUV now absent from every camera feed. Nia's stomach dropped. Where is it? Alex searched traffic systems. Nothing. Security cameras. Nothing. License readers. Nothing. The vehicle had vanished. At the jail, Captain Reed slipped his phone into his pocket. The defeated look disappeared. In its place emerged something colder, something far more dangerous. He looked directly at Simone. "If I go down, I'm not going alone." Then he turned and walked away. Simone watched him disappear down the corridor. A terrible feeling settled in her chest. The federal raid had succeeded. The evidence existed. The conspiracy was collapsing. Yet Captain Franklin Reed was still free. And a desperate man with nothing left to lose was often the most dangerous kind of enemy. The city awakened beneath grey skies and an uneasy silence. News helicopters circled above the industrial district, while reporters crowded outside police headquarters. Rumors spread faster than facts. Something major had happened overnight, but nobody yet understood the full scope. Inside the county jail, Simone Harper sat alone in a holding room. Guards moved through hallways with unusual urgency. Radios crackled constantly. Every face she saw carried the same expression: confusion, fear, uncertainty. For years, Captain Franklin Reed controlled every narrative inside Millhaven. Now that control was slipping away. Yet one fact continued troubling Simone. Reed was still free. The thought lingered in her mind like a storm cloud. Meanwhile, at the cabin, Nia Harper and her team barely paused to breathe. Federal agents had secured Warehouse Unit 17. Evidence seizures continued. Arrests expanded hourly. Yet Reed remained missing. Alex Rodriguez searched every available database: traffic cameras, license plate readers, financial transactions, cell phone activity. Nothing. It was as if the captain had disappeared into thin air. Sarah Parker studied recent intelligence reports. A man like Reed doesn't run. Nia looked up. "What do you mean?" Sarah leaned back thoughtfully. "People who run accept defeat. Reed doesn't see himself as defeated." The observation unsettled everyone, because it felt true. Across town, Detective Harris sat inside a federal interview room. Exhaustion lined his face. He had spent hours answering questions about corruption, false arrests, evidence manipulation, and narcotics trafficking. Everything was finally coming out. Names, dates, locations, victims. For the first time in years, Harris felt something unexpected: relief. Then federal agents entered carrying new information. One detail immediately changed the atmosphere. Captain Reed had emptied a private safety deposit box only hours before the warehouse raid. The timing could not be ignored. What was inside? Nobody knew. But Harris looked visibly shaken. "I think I do." Every eye turned toward him. Harris explained that Reed maintained secret files on powerful people throughout the region. Judges, politicians, business leaders, department officials, insurance policies, leverage, protection. If Reed truly possessed those records, his disappearance became far more dangerous. "He won't go quietly," Harris whispered. Back inside the jail, Simone finally received a visit. Nia entered, carrying fresh determination despite obvious exhaustion. The sisters sat across from each other, separated by glass. For a moment, neither spoke. The emotional weight of recent days filled the silence. Then Nia smiled. "They got the warehouse." Simone closed her eyes briefly. Months of effort. Years of sacrifice. Countless risks. Finally producing results. The gas station footage? Safe. The recordings? Safe. The financial records? Federal custody. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Except Reed. Nia's expression darkened. Nobody knows where he is. Simone immediately understood the danger. A desperate man with access to money, secrets, and corrupt connections could still cause enormous damage. Before their meeting ended, Simone shared one final concern. "Dad's case?" Nia nodded slowly. Federal investigators reopened it officially. Neither woman spoke for several seconds. The possibility lingered between them. Maybe Marcus Harper never took his own life. Maybe the biggest truth remained hidden. That afternoon, an emergency hearing convened at the courthouse. Reporters packed every available seat. Television cameras lined the walls. Federal prosecutors presented evidence obtained from the warehouse operation. The impact was immediate. Drug trafficking, money laundering, evidence tampering, witness intimidation, conspiracy. The allegations stretched across years. Then prosecutors introduced the gas station footage. The courtroom fell silent. Video screens displayed Officer Daniels planting narcotics inside Simone's trunk. The recording lasted less than a minute, yet it shattered the prosecution's entire case. Judges watched, reporters watched, citizens watched. The lie collapsed in real time. By evening, national news networks carried the story. Public opinion shifted dramatically. People who once doubted Simone now questioned everything. Protests formed outside city buildings. Community leaders demanded accountability. Families of previously convicted defendants stepped forward. The wall protecting Reed's operation was finally breaking apart. Then came the phone call. Just after midnight, a federal task force commander contacted Nia directly. His voice sounded grim. "We found Reed." Nia stood instantly. "Where?" The answer stunned her. "At an abandoned lakeside property registered under a shell corporation." The same property appeared in Marcus Harper's old investigation files. Federal agents were preparing a warrant. Sarah immediately understood the significance. "That's not random." Nia nodded. Neither believed in coincidences anymore. If Reed returned to a location connected to Marcus Harper, there was a reason. Maybe evidence remained hidden there. Maybe answers waited there. Maybe the truth about Marcus Harper's death had been sitting untouched for years. Hours later, federal teams surrounded the property before sunrise. Floodlights illuminated the shoreline. Agents moved carefully through the darkness. Inside the cabin command center, Nia, Sarah, and Alex watched updates arrive in real time. Nobody spoke. Then a message appeared. Evidence located. Multiple boxes, documents, recordings, photographs. Another message followed seconds later. Possible connection to Marcus Harper investigation. Nia felt tears filling her eyes. After all these years, answers might finally exist. Then the final update arrived. Captain Franklin Reed was inside the property. Alive, armed, and refusing to surrender. As federal negotiators established contact, dawn broke over Millhaven. The city held its breath. The corruption empire had collapsed. The evidence had surfaced. Justice stood closer than ever. But before the truth could fully emerge, one final confrontation remained. And Captain Franklin Reed had decided he would rather fight than face judgment. Dawn arrived beneath heavy clouds as federal agents surrounded the abandoned lakeside property. The water remained perfectly still, reflecting emergency lights flashing through the darkness. What had started as a traffic stop now stood on the edge of becoming one of the largest corruption scandals in state history. Inside a command vehicle overlooking the shoreline, investigators monitored every movement. Negotiators attempted contact. Tactical teams secured escape routes. No one wanted unnecessary violence. Yet everyone understood the danger. Captain Franklin Reed had spent years manipulating power. Now he had nothing left to lose. Across town, Simone Harper sat in a federal transport vehicle heading toward the property. Prosecutors believed she deserved to hear the truth firsthand. The evidence recovered overnight connected directly to her father's unfinished investigation. For years she carried questions without answers. For years she carried grief without closure. Today might finally change that. As the vehicle approached the lakeshore, reporters gathered behind police barricades. News helicopters hovered overhead. Cameras broadcast every development live across the country. Inside the cabin, Reed refused repeated requests to surrender. Federal negotiators spoke calmly. Reed responded with silence. Then, unexpectedly, he requested only one thing. He wanted to speak. Not to a lawyer, not to a judge. To Simone Harper. The request stunned everyone. After careful discussion, authorities agreed under controlled conditions. Minutes later, Simone entered the property accompanied by federal agents. The cabin felt frozen in time. Dust-covered furniture, old investigation files filled boxes stacked along the walls. Then she saw him. Captain Franklin Reed. Older, tired, defeated. For the first time since she met him, he looked like an ordinary man instead of an untouchable authority figure. The silence between them stretched for several seconds. Finally, Reed spoke. "Your father never stopped." Simone's heart tightened. "Neither did I." Reed laughed bitterly. "No, you didn't." His eyes drifted toward a weathered box sitting nearby. "Everything is in there. The investigations, the payments, the names, the recordings, the truth." Simone stared at him. "Including my father?" For the first time, Reed looked away. The answer came quietly. "Including your father." The room seemed smaller, the air heavier. Years of pain narrowed into a single moment. Reed admitted Marcus Harper had uncovered the operation years earlier. He had gathered evidence connecting officers, officials, and criminal networks. He planned to meet federal prosecutors. He never arrived. Not because he abandoned the investigation, not because he lost hope, but because powerful people intervened. Federal agents documented every word, every admission, every detail. The truth Simone spent years searching for finally stood before her. Her father had not betrayed his principles. He had died because he honored them. Outside, the sun slowly broke through the clouds. The long night was ending. After hours of testimony and evidence collection, Captain Franklin Reed surrendered peacefully. Federal agents escorted him from the property in handcuffs. The image spread instantly across television screens nationwide. The once celebrated police captain walked toward justice with cameras recording every step. Within days, charges against Simone Harper were formally dismissed with prejudice. Her record was cleared completely. Investigations expanded into neighboring jurisdictions. Additional arrests followed. Judge Harold Grant resigned. Several prosecutors faced disciplinary proceedings. Corrupt officers lost their badges. Wrongful convictions began reopening. Families separated for years finally received hope. Months later, Millhaven looked different. Not perfect, not healed, but different. A new civilian oversight board monitored law enforcement activities. Evidence handling procedures became transparent. Independent audits reviewed past convictions. Community leaders gained voices previously ignored. Simone helped establish the Marcus Harper Justice Initiative. The organization provided legal support to victims of misconduct and wrongful prosecution. Tasha Williams joined the program. Several exonerated citizens volunteered as advocates. The movement continued growing. One life at a time, one case at a time, one truth at a time. On a quiet afternoon, Simone visited her father's grave. The cemetery rested beneath warm sunlight. Gentle wind moved through the trees overhead. She placed flowers beside the headstone. For a long moment, she simply stood there, remembering, reflecting, healing. The fight had cost her nearly everything: her freedom, her career, her reputation. Yet it also revealed something powerful. Truth could be delayed, buried, attacked, even feared. But when courageous people refused to surrender, truth eventually found its way into the light. As Simone turned to leave, her phone vibrated. A message from Nia appeared. "Another whistleblower wants to talk." Simone smiled. Justice was never a destination. It was a journey requiring constant vigilance. There would always be new battles, new victims, new truths waiting to be uncovered. But there would also be people willing to fight for what was right. People like Marcus Harper, people like Nia, people like Tasha, and people like Simone. She took one final look at the headstone before walking toward the future. The story was no longer about corruption. It was about courage, about resilience, about ordinary people refusing to accept injustice as normal. And that lesson would outlive every scandal, every courtroom, and every corrupt official who believed power placed them above accountability. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, your viewing location, and share this video.